It was her laugh that did it. Not loud, not cruel. Just a sharp little scoff across the rim of her wine glass, half tilted in her hand like the words she just heard didn't merit her full attention. "You won't do anything," she said. The way she smirked when she said it, God, it was practiced. Like she'd said it before, maybe not out loud, but in her head 100 times. The table went quiet. Our two friends shifted slightly in their seats, one pretending to check a message, the other taking a longer sip from his drink. And then came the real incision, her sister's voice, low and glinting like polished steel. "Want me to help him pack?" No one laughed, not even her. I smiled, just a small one. Nothing performative. Then I stood, collected the empty plates with care, and carried them to the sink. The sound of running water filled the silence that followed. Nobody moved to help. She didn't call after me. No apology, no nudge under the table, no wink to show it was all just teasing. Because it wasn't. It never was, really. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was built. We'd been sitting on the edge of something for months. You could feel it. The difference between tension and distance is that tension hums. Distance just echoes. And I had stopped hearing echoes a while ago. But this was her drawing a line. No, she was daring me to erase it. I didn't slam a single dish. I didn't retreat to sulk. I dried my hands, walked back into the dining room, and began clearing the wine glasses with the same care I used to put into anniversary dinners. The room stayed awkwardly still. My voice, when I finally spoke, was smooth. "I'll get the guest blankets for your sister." She blinked at me, caught off guard for the first time all night. "What? You said she's staying over, right?" I glanced at her sister. "You usually end up on the couch, right?" Her sister tilted her head, not amused now. "I guess I do." I nodded. "I'll leave the blankets in the laundry room. If you need anything else, just ask her. I'm turning in early." No one stopped me as I left the room. I didn't slam the bedroom door either. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling while my mind sharpened like a blade against stone. This wasn't anger. Anger passes. This was instruction. She just told me exactly how low she thought I'd sunk, how powerless she assumed I'd become. That was valuable. That was data. And I'm a man who doesn't waste data. The next morning, everything looked the same. That's how it starts. Betrayal doesn't erupt, it seeps. She was at the stove in her robe, hair tied up, humming something tuneless while she stirred eggs. Like last night hadn't happened. Like, "You won't do anything," was a line from a sitcom instead of the knife it actually was. Her sister sat on a bar stool, sipping coffee, phone in hand, legs crossed like she lived here. I didn't bring it up. Not the comment, not the smirk, not the blank silence that followed it. I just took my coffee black and read emails on my phone, nodding politely when someone spoke, but volunteering nothing. That was the first change. I stopped giving. For the next few weeks, I let her talk while I listened. Not like before, not the kind of listening you do when you care about the content. This was a study. A quiet examination. Tone, timing, patterns. She thought I was sulking. She assumed I was pouting in some emotionally stunted protest, but I wasn't disconnected. I was documenting. I took note of how her mood shifted when her sister was around, brighter, quicker, sharper with her jokes, especially at my expense. I tracked how the visits increased from once a month to nearly once a week. "Just needed a break from my place," her sister would say. "Yours has better wine anyway." I watched her move through the house like it was hers, feet on the couch. Doors opened without knocking. Bathroom mirror fogged from long showers she didn't ask to take. She wasn't visiting. She was encroaching. I started keeping mental inventory of everything. Password changes. Locked drawers. Credit card statements. Nothing drastic yet, but the shift had begun. Emotionally, yes, but also logistically. You don't pack a parachute when the plane's already in flames. You pack it when the turbulence starts to repeat. At night, she still touched my arm sometimes. Still leaned into me on the couch like it meant something. But I'd stopped closing my eyes during those moments. Because when you stop pretending, even affection feels like camouflage. She didn't notice the difference. That was telling. And I didn't stop her sister from staying. I even poured her wine one evening, watched her eyes for hesitation. There was none. That was when I knew, whatever line they'd crossed together, it wasn't recent. It wasn't a slip. It was established. And the thing about patterns is, once you identify them, they become predictable. And predictability makes people vulnerable. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was preparing. The house was quiet. Early Saturday afternoon, light filtering through the living room blinds, just enough clutter on the counters to suggest real life. I was rinsing out a pan from the night before, the kind of task you don't think about, until your entire sense of reality shifts in a single sentence. It came from the kitchen hub, that oversized smart speaker she insisted we get last year, claiming it made meal prep easier. Usually it just reminded us of weather and appointments. But today, it decided to read a voice message aloud, because she'd linked her account and never changed the settings. A soft chime, then the device spoke in its usual cheerful tone. New voice message from Alana. That was her sister. Then came the voice, clear, unfiltered, unmistakable. Liam said you're way more fun when your husband's not around. The sentence landed with a metallic clang. Not metaphorically. I dropped the pan. She heard it too. She'd been walking in with laundry, froze mid-step as the message hung in the air between us like smoke from something electrical. She didn't speak. Not a word. I looked at her, really looked. Her face was a flash of something. Shock, guilt, maybe calculation, but not remorse. That wasn't there. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. A flicker of something in her eyes told me she was already thinking 2 moves ahead, like a chess player caught off guard mid-opening. Not sorry. Just adjusting. I didn't say a thing. I dried my hands, brushed past her gently, and headed upstairs. The silence followed me up like a second shadow. She didn't come after me. That was telling, too. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. I didn't check messages or call anyone. I just sat still. Thought. Measured. The truth wasn't in the sentence itself. It was in the ease with which it was said. The assumption baked into it. When your husband's not around. The kind of phrase people use when it's routine. When it's been said before, and no one corrected it. There it was. Not a hunch. Not suspicion. Proof of tone, of implication, of boundary long crossed, and her silence confirmed it all. I didn't ask who Liam was, because I already knew he wasn't the only one. I didn't confront her. That's what she was waiting for, I think. A blow-up. A shouting match. Something to reframe the dynamic and paint me as overreacting. But I gave her nothing. Just space. Controlled silence. And in that silence I worked. The first move was financial. I logged into our shared accounts and froze the joint credit cards. No alerts were sent, just locked. She'd find out soon enough at a register, when her swipe failed and the person behind her in line started shifting impatiently. That wasn't cruelty. That was a boundary, drawn clean. Next, I disabled her access to my business cloud. She'd had it for convenience. Spreadsheets, proposals, templates. Not anymore. She wouldn't notice immediately, not until she tried to pull something and hit a login wall. Again, no warning. No explanation. Just a silent closure. I reviewed every subscription, every app, every linked account. Changed passwords. Scrubbed fingerprints. She used to tease me about how organized I was. She stopped laughing when it stopped working in her favor. Then I called Benji. He's not a lawyer. He's better. He's the guy who got me my first silent partner contract reviewed without it ever touching a courtroom. He referred me to a discreet legal specialist who worked out of a downtown suite that didn't even have signage. We met in person. I paid in cash. Clean, quiet, and untraceable to any joined accounts. I'm not looking to blow this up. I told her, yes, her, the attorney, maybe mid-40s, deliberate in her questions. I'm looking to exit clean, with full protections in place. She nodded slowly, reading between the lines without needing me to say the words. Do you have reason to believe your spouse is preparing a separation strategy? I gave the smallest nod. Then we'll move quickly and without filing yet, she said. Everything prepped and timed. You'll stay ahead. By the time I left that office, my entire posture had changed. I hadn't noticed how much tension I'd been carrying until I started to shed it. Back home, she was on the couch scrolling through her phone, feet tucked under a blanket, hair in a braid, looking, for all appearances, like the woman I married. And for a moment, I almost believed it. Almost. But I'd seen too much. And the one rule I live by in business applies here too. If someone quietly prepares for your failure, they're not planning to save you when it happens. It started with a gut instinct, an itch I couldn't shake. We used to share everything through cloud folders, travel itineraries, renovation plans, even old scanned documents from when we first moved in together. At some point I stopped checking them. She didn't. That was my mistake. Late one night, while she slept in the next room, She'd fallen asleep on the couch again, or pretended to. I sat at my office desk, scrolling through archived folders buried behind layers of subdirectories. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just patterns, digital echoes. That's when I found it. A folder named Drafts, not synced. That was odd. Everything else synced automatically. This one didn't. I opened it. Inside, a single PDF file, titled Separation Plan, dated draft. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, trying to steady the rush of cold in my chest. When I finally clicked, it opened slow. My internet lagged just enough to draw out the moment. It wasn't a plan for separation. It was a blueprint for unilateral control. Timestamps, financial projections, leverage points. It listed accounts. Some I'd forgotten even existed. It outlined tactics, not discussions. There were even bulleted lists under headings like recommended narrative and suggested timing, emotional advantage. She had outlined a preferred month to initiate the conversation, tied to my busiest financial quarter. Her logic was sound: strike when distracted, when defenses are down. And then, further down, screenshots, images of me in private moments, at my desk, in the backyard reading, watching something on my laptop, zoomed in, timestamped, labeled. It took me a moment to realize these weren't random photos. They were curated snapshots meant to craft a story. Images meant to craft a version of me, distant, inattentive, emotionally withdrawn. Pieces to justify the narrative. I didn't react. I didn't slam the laptop shut or punch the desk. I copied the entire folder to an encrypted drive and uploaded a backup to a secure offsite server. Then I deleted the access logs. I sat there for nearly an hour afterward, hands steepled, elbows on the desk, just breathing. That wasn't betrayal anymore. That was premeditated exit strategy, with optics management. She wasn't wondering whether to leave. She was preparing to win. The next morning, I didn't look at her any differently. That was the trick. She needed to believe I was still 2 steps behind. While she moved through the kitchen, humming as she poured coffee, I was replaying every timestamp from the separation draft in my head. Every item she planned to use as evidence of my distance. Every manipulation of context. I'd already copied everything, but I wasn't finished. A plan like hers, carefully built, timed, scoped, that meant she wasn't acting alone. So I made 2 more moves. First, I called a forensic accountant. Quiet, private referral. Not to dig into her spending, yet, but to trace asset movement. In particular, liabilities tied to my business. I gave them one directive: flag anything with my name listed as guarantor or co-signer that I hadn't initiated. The second move was more surgical. I hired a private investigator, not for affairs or hotel receipts. That wasn't the point anymore. I needed to know if she was trying to turn my assets into her exit ladder. 3-day contract, tight scope, asset tracing, third-party coordination, real estate inquiries. The results came back faster than expected. She had applied for a lease downtown. A high-rise. Not flashy, just enough to disappear into. But here's the twist. The application listed my business as a guarantor. She had used outdated paperwork, documents from 2 years ago when we refinanced equipment, and attempted to package it as current standing. The application had been flagged for manual review, which bought me time. That's when I understood the play. She was staging a clean break while setting up fallback options tied to my credit, my assets, my silence. And if I had reacted emotionally, if I'd confronted her too soon, she would have spun it, claimed I was trying to control her financially. She had the outlines ready for that narrative too, but she hadn't anticipated I'd find the draft first. She hadn't anticipated I'd stay silent and strategic. That night, she climbed into bed next to me, tossing the covers with the same ease she always had. As if nothing had shifted. As if we were still orbiting the same truth. She curled against me, her head on my chest. I stayed still, heart steady. Not cold, just clear. She thought she was preparing for a war she could manage. But I'd already redrawn the battlefield. It was late afternoon when I found her sister sitting on our back porch, alone. No drink in her hand for once, no performative sunglasses, no casual smirk. Just stillness, the kind that looked foreign on her. I stepped out quietly, not to sneak up, just to observe. She didn't flinch. Just glanced over her shoulder and said, "She's not home." "I know," I replied, easing down into the chair opposite hers. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was tense, like the air before a thunderclap. She stared out at the yard, at nothing. "You hate me now?" she asked, not with guilt, more like curiosity. "No," I said, watching her closely. "But I don't trust you." That got a small nod from her. She deserved that line. But she didn't push back. Instead, she let out a breath like it had been waiting in her for weeks. "You should know," she began, her voice lower now, deliberate. "You're not overreacting. You're not paranoid." She didn't look at me when she said it. Just continued, her tone stripped of pretense. "She's been planning this longer than you think. Talking to people. Positioning herself. Trying to lock down a version of the story before the story even starts." I didn't ask why she was telling me this. I didn't give her the satisfaction of gratitude either. I let her keep going, because she needed to say it. "You have no idea how far she's taken this," she said quietly. "She's got folders, contacts. She's rewriting history before she even leaves it." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're just telling me this out of what, pity?" Her eyes finally met mine. "No. She crossed the line with me too. And I don't like being used as camouflage. I didn't sign up to be her decoy." There it was. Not guilt, just offense. Her pride had been pricked. She stood up then, brushing imaginary lint from her jeans. "Don't wait to defend yourself. She's not going to give you that chance." And then she left. No goodbye. Just the back door clicking shut behind her. I sat there for a while longer, listening to the distant hum of the neighborhood. I didn't believe her completely. Not yet. But I didn't dismiss her either. Because sometimes, even a broken compass points true, if only for a moment. And when someone from her own family starts warning you, you don't question it. You act. I left on a Wednesday. No storm. No slammed doors. Just silence, measured and absolute. I walked out of that house the same way I walked into it 7 years earlier. Calm, focused, and carrying only what mattered. I'd chosen the day precisely. Midweek meant low visibility. She'd be at work, and her sister, by then suspiciously absent, wouldn't be hovering like she had been for the past month. There'd be no audience, no dramatics, just the conclusion of a plan executed cleanly. I took only essentials, documents, drives, personal files, and the things I'd gathered quietly during the last few weeks. Everything else I left behind, not because it didn't matter, but because I had already extracted what mattered from it. On the kitchen table, I placed a simple folder. Inside, a prepaid legal packet. It contained the full documentation, screenshots of her separation plan, copies of the lease application, the flagged financial trails, and one clause printed in bold yellow highlight. Breach of fiduciary duty in a joint partnership. She would understand what that meant. It wasn't just about leaving. It was about accountability. Financial, legal, strategic. No note. No farewell letter. That would have made it personal. This wasn't personal anymore. It was procedural. But I left one thing behind. My wedding band. I'd flattened it carefully, clamped it in a vise the night before, then placed it on her pillow. Not dramatic. Not symbolic. Just final. By the time she got home, I was halfway to the airport. Not flying anywhere, just dropping the rental car I'd used for the move. My phone was on airplane mode. Her calls could stack up in silence. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not even the mutual friends we still shared. I wanted her to be the one to explain the silence. I wanted her to choose how to lie now that she had no script, no plan, no safety net. The house wasn't empty. It was echoing. And somewhere inside it, she was reading the one thing I'd left unspoken. "You said I wouldn't do anything. You were wrong." By Friday morning, the first ripple hit. Her bank card stopped working, declined at a boutique downtown she frequented. A quiet inconvenience at first, followed by rising panic when it happened again at the gas station. She called the bank. The account wasn't closed. It was just frozen. Legally, strategically, and without warning. Later that day, the leasing office contacted her. The lease she tried to push through with my business as guarantor had been flagged during final verification. They cited irregular documentation and informed her the unit had been reassigned. She pushed back. They pushed her to legal. I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from the forensic accountant, who updated me regularly now. But it wasn't just the financial unraveling that hit her. Her employer received an anonymous but well-documented packet, detailing that she had used her professional email address and title while negotiating personal housing tied to a business affiliation that was not hers. No accusations, just inquiries. The message was clear. Someone was watching. She was asked to take personal leave while HR reviewed the situation. Not a suspension. Not a firing. Just a quiet invitation to disappear for a while, so the company could distance itself, without headlines. Her silence was deafening. No texts. No calls. Not a single apology or outburst. That told me everything. She hadn't prepared for a counterattack. She'd planned for weakness, not precision. She was ready to manage guilt, attempt to shift blame, stage sympathy. But what she faced now wasn't just emotional fallout, it was a full unraveling. And in that collapse, she couldn't find footing. It's a strange thing, watching someone realize they're not in control for the first time in years. She had always played ahead of emotion, ahead of facts. But this time, she had no idea where the next strike would come from, because I wasn't playing anymore. I was finishing, quietly, completely. And she was just beginning to feel what silence really sounded like. By Monday, the calls started coming, not from her, but from mutual friends. Carefully worded messages, thinly veiled curiosity. Everyone pretending to check in, but what they really wanted to know was what happened. I answered none of them directly. I let the silence work. Then came the one message that told me everything had turned. It was from a friend we both trusted once. She had messaged him, probably hoping he'd lean on our history, maybe paint me as the one who just left, without explanation. His response was short, but he screenshotted it and sent it to me directly. Your sister warned him. You kept pushing. He just finished the game. That phrase spread. I saw it reworded across texts and social media subtweets. People love a line that sounds like a proverb. It becomes shorthand, less messy than facts, more satisfying than truth. And then came the rest, the real twist. Liam. Turns out, Liam wasn't hers to lose. He was married. Still is, technically. But not for long. His wife had been quiet in the background, watching, until she wasn't. She found messages too. Maybe not the same ones I heard, but enough. And unlike me, she didn't move silently. She moved publicly. Group messages. Workplace fallout. Screenshots shared like currency. The narrative turned fast, and suddenly my wife wasn't just someone who'd lost a marriage. She was someone who helped dismantle another life behind closed doors. 2 lives were imploding, and she was at the center of both. I never said a word. I didn't gloat. Didn't feed the fire. Just let the chaos circle her while I stayed steady. Her silence became more desperate. She reached out to her sister. She didn't get the response she wanted. Whatever alliance they had, it broke when the consequences arrived. Her carefully constructed narrative had unraveled under its own weight. No audience. No applause. Just wreckage. And me? I wasn't just gone. I was clean. There's a difference. It took weeks to finalize. Not the logistics. Those had already been set in motion. It was the wording. The tone. The final delivery. I wasn't interested in warnings. I was interested in clarity. So I wrote one line by hand, on thick stationery, folded once, and placed it inside a sealed envelope along with 3 documents. A signed affidavit, confirming I was waiving claim to joint equity on the property we'd once chosen together. A notarized declaration of financial non-liability, protecting my business against any personal debts she might accrue. And a notice of formal disassociation, dated and reviewed, stating that any use of my name for financial guarantees had been revoked and registered. It was clean, sharp, irrevocable. I didn't send it to her directly. I sent it to her parents' house. Couriered, signature required. Not out of cruelty, but because that was the only place I knew she would still want to look composed, where reputation mattered. The envelope arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. I knew because the courier confirmed it. Her father signed. They read it. I know this because a friend of the family, someone who hadn't yet picked a side, forwarded me a short message days later. They didn't defend her this time, just sat in silence. Her mom cried. Her dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in one letter. And the handwritten line I left inside? It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was just final. You said I'd never do anything. You were right, until I did everything. No threats. No insults. No open wounds. Just closure. And the quiet understanding that some exits don't need to be loud. They just need to be complete.